Hello and welcome back to Big Photo Boys podcast. Today I'm without my co-host and co-pilot Kurt. I only found out 5 minutes ago he won't be joining me, but that's okay. We roll with the punches here. So today there's just a few things I'm going to kind of riff on, some stuff that I had written down that perhaps this is the best medium to get it out. Perhaps this is the best way to unleash this content into the world, because I have been thinking pretty heavily about restarting a blog, somewhere where I can put some photos and some words, because I do quite like writing. And I think there was a quote we mentioned recently: if you ever find yourself on the side of majority, it's time to pause and reflect. I think perhaps it could be just an interesting way to do it a bit differently, rather than the same Instagram posts or YouTube videos or whatever. But perhaps a long format conversation like this could work pretty well too. And I have to start looking at the camera and not the screen. It's different doing it by yourself. Anyway, hope you guys have been well. This is the last one of the year. It has been a very interesting year, to say the least, for me. Some extreme highs, some lows this year as well. I don't want to talk about the spicy cough any more than I already have on the podcast, but overall I'd say it's been one of the best years of my life, but at the same time I'd be glad to see the end of this year. So I hope you guys are having a safe and happy holiday season wherever you are in the world. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? The first thing I wanted to talk about was, are Instagram photographers real photographers? Sorry, let me start that again. Are YouTube photographers real photographers is what I actually wanted to say. I've Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those, they've sort of come and gone from my life a little bit. For most of this year, I have not had those on my phone. I still have them on the computer if I want to access them, but I've not had them on my phone. And I sort of went on peak lockdown, I really went on an information diet. I didn't want to have a lot of this mental clutter and just sort of the nonsense and just the bad news cycle coming through every day. It was just getting overwhelming, and it was just a time in my life where I decided I just need to be really deliberate about what I consume in terms of like my information diet. I've heard it being called before. So I got rid of a lot of them, and it brought a lot of clarity to me. I feel like this is sometimes like a bit of an annoying thing to hear people talk about, because usually when people do this thing, they make a big post saying, I'm deleting, I'm leaving, or whatever. And it's almost like you do that so people say, oh my God, I'm going to miss you, which nobody does, because let's be honest, we all just look out for ourselves. I mean that in the most sincere way possible. I don't mean it that I'm mean or anyone is mean, but let's be honest, we're just all living in our own little bubble here, and that's what we do. Anyway, I've been on YouTube for ages. I actually uploaded my first YouTube video in about, I think it must have been 2010. It was just a few months out of high school pretty much. I had a vlog on there. It's pretty cringe. It's on private on my channel, and it will more than likely never see the light of day. I might, down the track, I might share a few clips or two just for laughs, but in general, I'm glad it's not on there. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is YouTube has been a big part of my life for a long time. So over 10 years at this point. And when I first picked up photography, which was either later that year, 2010, or perhaps in 2011 sometime, I can't remember, YouTube was where I learned everything. That's how I became a photographer, through YouTube. And in those early days, there was a bunch of guys that I followed that were just doing it before anyone else. They were basically doing it for, I don't know what reason exactly they were doing it for, because you couldn't really make money on YouTube in those days. It was a shadow of what the platform is today, right? There was no AdSense. I think at some point, a few years, it might have been around that time. It might have been like 2011, 12. They did introduce like a partner program. You had to have a certain amount of subscribers. You had to apply for it. It was all up in the air. It was very mysterious, but I don't think anyone was really making any decent money from YouTube. Anyway, when I think back to those days, I think of people like Jared Polin and like Matt Granger, who used to be called That Nikon Guy. Was there anyone else? Digital Rev TV was very early on and very influential to me. Those are probably the main ones for me, at least. And all of those guys in some way or another are still making videos online, which is super cool, first of all. But secondly, when I revisit that stuff, there's so much hate on their videos, particularly Jared Polin and Matt Granger, and sort of a lot of talk that I see about these guys online. And I have searched a little bit just out of curiosity and checked Reddit and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the hate that I see is these guys aren't real photographers. They don't do real jobs. They don't do what they talk about. These guys just know about gear and they talk about gear. And first of all, well, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, the person that's saying that sort of thing, the person who is gatekeeping photography in that way, or the person who's classifying photographers into real, or I think what they're saying by real photographer is they're not a professional photographer. They're not a working professional photographer. That's what they're saying, which is bullshit, because there are many different corners of this industry. And, well, to be honest, I really admire the sort of person who, and I think all of those guys fit into this category, the sort of person who, instead of competing for the same sort of, let's say, I guess it is a finite amount of jobs, right? There is a limited number of traditional photography clients. I'm not going to deny that, but instead of competing for those same clients that all the other photographers are going for, they have thought a bit bigger than that, and they've basically created a category in and of itself, which means that if you create a new category, by default, you are at the top of that category. Let's say Digital Rev, first of all. Kai and Locke, and in the early days, they had a girl, Alambi, with them as well. They used to make fun, informative camera reviews. They used to do challenges. They used to have the sort of content that no one else was doing, and they had a little bit of production behind them. Obviously, they had access to the gear, and they would sell cameras, man. I think I bought a couple of cameras from Digital Rev, and at that point in time, they were grey market. That was a funny time in photography because the American dollar was so weak. I think on the back end of the financial crisis, I can only assume that's why, but certainly the Australian dollar was really strong in comparison. So to buy products from overseas was lucrative. Like, you could save so much money from buying camera gear overseas. So my first couple of cameras were grey market, and I'm pretty sure I bought them both from Digital Rev because I used to watch their videos. So when you think about that, like, this is just some kid from Australia buying his first cameras. These guys were in China at the time, putting out videos on the internet every week. The return on investment for the budget and the time spent on that sort of thing must have been just incredible. Like, these guys were one of the biggest photography channels in the world at the time, and they must have been moving units, and this was from their own shop, their own web store at the time. Anyway, I'm digressing a little bit here, but I suppose the same could be said for the other guys. Like, Jared Polin, he used to always tout black rapid straps. He had his own signature black rapid strap and like think tank bags. I bought a black rapid strap. To this day, I use think tank equipment, and from those early days, from watching Jared and him talking about that stuff in his videos, I'm a lifetime think tank customer now. I will happily use their bags for as long as I live because I love the products. And you know, this guy Jared Polin gets a lot of shit now, as does Matt Granger. I don't see Digital Rev getting as much shit, but I think it's because everyone knows that Kai and Locke aren't professional photographers. They've come from literally a camera shop. I'm sorry if you are watching this and you don't recognize some of these names. I would highly recommend just searching up Digital Rev TV and looking over their old videos. And I assume if you're a photographer and you've been on YouTube for some time, you've come across Jared Polin and Matt Granger. Where was I going with that? So Jared Polin and Matt Granger, let's talk about them a little bit. Both of these guys get a lot of shit on the internet, and I think it's just so unfair. So firstly, going back to what we were saying about the post on Reddit or whatever, like the sort of person that is trying to gatekeep photography in that way, sort of person who's saying that these guys aren't real photographers or they're not professional photographers. First of all, who are you and like what have you done that you get to decide who is and isn't a photographer? I can not even almost guarantee, I can guarantee that those people aren't the top tier commercial working photographers in whatever area that they live. Because the way the world works is it's not the top that are complaining. It's not the Joey L's of the world that are in the YouTube comments talking shit. And it's not the bottom. It's not the new photographers that are here to learn and just like a sponge soaking up every bit of free, by the way, information that these guys are putting out. It's the middle ground. It's the crabs in a bucket. I'm not sure if you've heard of the crabs in a bucket analogy, but it's something along the lines of if you put a whole bunch of crabs in the same bucket, one crab will try and crawl out, and as the crab is making its way up the side of the bucket, the other crabs will pull it down. That's what that middle ground of photographers is. Again, not the new photographers, not the legit pros. It's everyone in between who thinks they've staked their claim, and they're frustrated because they perhaps haven't taken photography where they want, or they don't get the enjoyment out of photography that they think they should, or to be honest, I don't know why. There could be a lot of reasons, but for some reason it's that weird middle ground that is just vocal and outspoken, and to be honest can just be quite nasty. There's a lot of competition in the photography world. So yeah, Jared Polin does make a lot of gear reviews, and certainly historically has made a lot of content for beginner photographers. I suppose you could say it's the same for Matt Granger. Matt Granger offers, if you were to go back through his channel, you'd find pretty much, to learn the basics on pretty much all aspects of photography, I'd imagine. He's got shooting in manual mode, off-camera flash he did a lot of, portraiture, environmental portraiture, art nudes is sort of like his main bread and butter, I'm pretty sure. Jared Polin would have similar stuff, all about camera settings, shooting in low lights. He used to shoot bands, sports he does a lot of, and like printing, that sort of stuff. Some very informative content, but when you think about all those things, think about who that content is for. And for the most part, it's for new photographers, right? In my mind, it's either for new photographers to the craft, or it's for people who, like myself, they watch this content for entertainment. Personally, I watch photography content on YouTube because I don't really care about watching television, and I don't really watch Netflix. And, that's just my way of switching off and consuming. I've always just loved the platform, and I've just always been around, and I like to see what everyone else is doing. And it's just entertainment because I love I love my entertainment to be themed around photography and making videos, because those are the things that I love to do. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. The people talking shit about Jared Polin and Matt Granger, the videos aren't for you. It's as simple as that, really. Or they are for you, but you've moved past them in your journey because you've grown as a photographer, and the basic tutorials or the same lens reviews aren't for you anymore, because you know how to shoot now, and you have a bag full of lenses, and you're not interested in Tamron or Sigma or they're not for you, dude, brother. I'm generalizing here, but it is usually guys. In my experience, it's usually angry guys on Reddit. I don't know why. But for some reason, these dudes are just the most hated photographers on the internet. When you think about it, in a way, being a professional photographer, being a commercial photographer, and I was having this discussion with a friend of mine like 2 nights ago. Sometimes I feel like a bit of a douche calling myself commercial photographer, because it just, in some ways, I feel like when I say that, it's sort of like trying to sound bigger than what I am or who I am, right? But it's not. There's actually no other way to describe it. Commercial photographer just means you're taking photos that are going to be used by someone's business, right? They're going to be used in a commercial way for advertising, for social media, for product photography. Commercial means you're not just taking photos for your neighbor, or you're not just taking photos of, wildlife or macro photography of bugs in the park. Commercial photography means it's going to be, someone's paying you, and it's going to be used for the purpose of furthering someone's business. That's how I see it anyway, and I don't know any other way to say it, so I'm going to continue to say it. I don't know why it's like I'm asking permission right now, but when you think about it, commercial photography, or professional photography, as some people might say, it's not that fun, because, to be honest, a lot of the time, unless you're... The dog is barking. A lot of the time, unless you're at the top of your industry, you're shooting stuff that you're not that passionate about. You're shooting stuff because this is what the client wants, and it's your job to shoot something, to take nice photos. That's literally what it is. I'm not saying that in a cynical way, and I'm not complaining. I just understand that's what the job is. A lot of commercial photography is, here's the client, here's the brief, you're the photographer, it's your job to make great pictures, according to the brief, right? That's what it comes down to. That's not always fun. In fact, a lot of the time, it's not that fun. It's hard work. It can be very stressful. When you think about the YouTubers, these guys shoot exactly what they want when they want, right? In a way, they've cracked the code. And I'm quite envious of that. I think that's fantastic, because, to be honest, if I had to choose, rather than be a professional photographer, I would much rather be a photographer who takes pictures of things that they love, or rather than being a professional photographer who has lost the passion for shooting whatever they're doing, because again, it's often a product or a client or something that doesn't mean something to you. If you could get paid to shoot the things that you love, and make a career out of doing that, like these guys on YouTube have done, then that's a no-brainer, right? In a way, these guys have beaten the system, because, like we mentioned at the start, they're not competing for the same clients. They've made a new category, and they've made a living off of doing that. Like, how commendable is that? Anyway, it's something that I've thought of quite a lot. And not to mention, how difficult must it be to make that sustainable? Like, it's okay to come up, you get known for something, And then, the nature of YouTube is the algorithm changes, people's tastes change, and inevitably your views and subscribers are up and down. Inevitably you're going to fall off because that's what happens. So to be able to reinvent yourself and stay relevant, or at least just, stay making an income, that is very commendable. That's a cool thing. That's definitely what I aspire to do. I would take that over being a very successful, rich, unhappy photographer in the commercial world any day of the week. Yeah. Anyway, was that a rant? That felt like it was a bit of a rant. And I'm also sorry if it sounded like I was kissing ass a little bit. I don't think that's what I was doing, but yeah, when I see people write nasty things in the YouTube comments, it does get me a little bit riled up, because it's like, who are you, dude? Why are you so upset for? These people, they're doing their best. They're making content that's obviously not for you, and it's free. Did I mention it's free? I kind of do wish it would never happen, but I kind of do wish that there was a way that to make an account online and to comment on something that someone's created, you had to do it with your own name and picture. I think people would be a lot nicer and a lot more thoughtful about what they post. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to talk about because I think it's really important, and it certainly changed the way that I think about it a little bit. Something else that's been on my mind a little bit lately is having your own style as a photographer. I've been, the last couple of months, having a little bit of an identity crisis, I think. Don't get me wrong, coming out of lockdown, I've been shooting a lot. Like, the job that I've been doing for 4 years now, and I haven't counted, but I must have over 1,000 shoots under my belt. Like, if not, it must be getting close. It's like some days I would do 3 or 4 shoots a day, running around town. So, 200 or 300 a year minimum, I would imagine, over 4 years. If I had to guess, I'd say it was over 1,000 shoots in the last 4 years. Some big, some small, but regardless, 1,000 different jobs. And I guess the nature of what I do is I shoot someone else's client for someone else. And the nature of it is to make it feel seamless, to make it feel like under the canopy, under the blanket of the business, everything works together. So in a way, I kind of have had to, shoot and edit for someone else's taste. I don't want to get into that too much, but somewhere along the way, what I'm trying to get at is I feel like I've lost my own style, my own identity as a photographer. And it's been something I've been thinking a lot about lately. I've mentioned it a bit on the podcast. It also doesn't help that I've recently swapped to Sony. I'm in a new camera system. I'm still a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know the system. I don't know the camera body like the back of my hand, like I used to do with my Canon, with my 5D Mark III. So it's still a little bit uncomfortable to use. Don't get me wrong, I always get the job done. Client is always happy, but it's just not quite the same. So, the Canon thing was so much a part of my identity for a long time. I was a Canon shooter. I knew how to treat the raw files. I knew I could, shoot the cameras and the lenses without, with my eyes closed basically. So moving to a new system definitely hasn't helped. But also, post-processing, I feel like, is a big part of someone's style. Learning how to edit the Sony RAW files, again, something I've mentioned before. The color space is just a whole other thing. I didn't realize how different it would be. So yeah, it's something I've been thinking about, and I've been trying to work out how to get my groove back and get my style back. I suppose this is all under the banner. When I came back to YouTube, the goal was to fall back in love with photography. And looking back to my favorite shoots or my favorite periods shooting, I sort of knew exactly who I was. I could take a photo and I sort of knew I knew what the final product was going to look like as I took the photo. Whereas nowadays, I focus a lot more on the actual shooting and taking and making a great picture. But the post-processing, I kind of figure out on the other end. Another thing is, in my day job, I shoot exclusively Capture One. And I've actually come to really like Capture One. I think there's a lot of things, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more powerful than Lightroom. It's a lot more fully featured. But one thing that Capture One has never had going for it, in my opinion, is I've never been able to make a style that can transfer across a lot of different types of image. So in Lightroom, on my Canon gear, I had, let's say, 10 or so presets that I could use across just about anything. I had a handful of presets for live music. I had some natural light presets. I had some like studio presets or ones that I'd use with artificial light. And I could pretty much, if I took a photo, I would almost know which preset was going on it already. And to me, that was part of my style, because I don't think this is being insecure, but I think this is just the truth. I think for the most part, I'm using a lot of the same equipment as a lot of other people. And it's not like, technique wise, I'm doing anything particularly outstanding. I'm not trying to sell myself short. I'm not trying to say I'm a bad photographer, but I really do think a lot of the style, at least for me, has been in the edit. And yeah, Capture One, for some reason, the color grading tools, I've never been able to create, they're called styles. The presets are called styles in Capture One, by the way, but I've never been able to make styles that I can use consistently. There are a few built into Capture One that are not bad, that I've used to varying degrees of success, but I've never been able to sort of crack that code. And I'm not sure what it is. I actually do really like Capture One though. If you are shooting professionally and you need to shoot tethered, if you haven't, if you don't already have Capture One, you should definitely try it. I actually think there might be, I could be wrong here, but I think there's a Capture One Express for Sony. It might even come like with Sony cameras. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's free or otherwise cheap. So if you're a Sony shooter, it might be worth looking into. Otherwise, Capture One is just cool because it's like, I think it's $200 or $300. You own it outright. I just bought Capture One 21 during last year, and it came with a free upgrade to Capture One 22. And that'll be out for at least the next year or two, I'd imagine. And it's one less bill every month. I can use it forever if I want to. Getting a bit off track here as I often do. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is I'm sort of caught between the two softwares. I know for my natural light shots or for the stuff that I do in the studio, I'm much more comfortable in Lightroom, to be honest. But Capture One is very powerful, and I think this is the best way I can sum it up. You can make a great image look outstanding in Capture One, but in Lightroom, you can make an average image look great. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's fair. In Capture One, you have to shoot it well to edit it well. Capture One, you can't really polish a turd, in my opinion. So that's part of it, because I'm in a new system and I just can't stick to one editor or the other. Depending on what I do, I'll pick and choose a different one for that specific job. And yeah, that certainly hasn't helped. If anyone has made or has used really good Capture One styles in the past, I've been trying to find a really good style pack. I don't really like any of the ones that Capture One actually offers, because some of those come with the price of the license for Capture One 21. I've never really liked any of them. They just don't work for me. Where was I going with that? If anyone's created or if anyone's used a really good Capture One style pack, I would love to know about it, because I would not be opposed to spending money on really good Capture One presets so I could reverse engineer them, so I could go back and see exactly what was done to the images to make them look good. Because to be honest, I think that is the main value, that's the main sell, for me at least, in buying someone else's presets. I bought some preset packs before from, there's a company called Rook and Rover. I kind of don't want to shout them out because it feels like they're not as good anymore. I think the company might have been sold, and because I did buy a preset pack from them last year that I just wasn't happy with. But a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I did buy a really good pack from them, and it taught me a lot about Lightroom. And really, I think that is so valuable for not even a new photographer, for someone trying to develop their own style, to click a preset on, scroll through the settings and see what is affecting what, to see what you like about that preset and work out how to make that into something that is your own style, to work out how to make that your own. That is just invaluable. You know, even if a preset pack costs $100, $150, it's just kind of a no-brainer, right? Yeah. So I feel a bit lost. I think probably the only way that I'm going to find my voice again and find my style is by just taking more photos for myself, by just allowing myself to shoot more, even if it's bad. This is something that I've talked about a little bit in my content recently, and it's just about allowing yourself to suck. I think it might have not have been put in those exact terms, but I think I learned that from Sean Tucker. If you watch some of his videos, and he talks about just allowing himself to play and allowing himself to take bad photos, or just click the shutter, and that is like a cue, or like a visual note, as he calls it, something to revisit. It's just like recording. It's like jotting down something on your notepad or in your iPhone or whatever, something to revisit. But I really think you learn by taking bad photos, and just taking photos in general. You certainly don't learn sitting at a desk, scrolling through Instagram. Maybe you do learn through scrolling through Instagram, but I still think you have to actually get out there and put in the work. And it's certainly something that I have been doing more of. I've been getting out and shooting things for fun and shooting things for videos, which is cool. What else was I going to say about that? One other thing that has really helped me, and I hate to be the sort of person that is advocating for the fact that gear can, fill a hole like this or solve a problem. But recently, after Kurt and I spoke about it on a previous episode, I said I wasn't going to do it, but I bought myself, treated myself for Christmas to a Fuji X100v. I have to say, I've only shot it just a couple of times, shooting some family pictures, but the colors straight out of the camera, the color profiles of the Fuji are just stunning. That's another thing. Hey, you perhaps presets is not what I'm looking for. I've thought about this before, but it just hit me then. Perhaps what I need to do is for my Sony camera to help me create the edits that I want, and to help me create the edits I want consistently, maybe I need to make profiles. So I know you can do it in Lightroom. I'm not sure about Capture One. There must be a way. But if you can have a profile that is applied to your RAW file as soon as you import it, that will start you off much closer. That will just sort of, as far as I know what that is, you know, it maybe just like fixes up some of the contrast and shifts some of the colors, corrects for the certain lens or a certain manufacturer. So that's something I'm definitely going to look into, actually, now that I think about it. I'm going to look into making some profiles for my own benefit, because I think that could make my life a lot easier. Anyway, I'm rambling. There's been a lot of that happening because I don't have my co-pilot here to bounce off. Kurt, I miss you. Please don't leave me again. Come back. Anyway, I've been shooting the Sony camera, and I suppose where I'm getting to was the colors are just so beautiful. It makes photography fun again, and I think what I'm going to try and do is try and match the colors of my Sony files to the files that come off the Fuji. I think that would be a really good way to start to find my voice again. And the plan is, because this thing is so small and portable, and let's be honest, beautiful. It's just a beautiful accessory, something to hold and to look cool holding. I'm going to try and take this around with me every day, even just going to the supermarket or walking the dog or whatever else. I can't remember if that's the point that I was going to make, but such is the problem of sitting by myself for 37 minutes and talking to a camera. Anyway, I might start to wrap up there. Yeah, it's an ongoing experiment. I think, to summarize, to find my own style, my experiments are going to need to be basically shoot more, shoot often, allow myself to suck, see if I can find somewhere or someone that can advise me at least on how to make good Capture One styles. Again, if you know of any, if you've used any, I've been looking at the Maston Labs one. They actually look pretty legit. They are expensive, but they look pretty good. If you know of any really good Capture One style packs, please send them my way. And yeah, did I say allow myself to suck? I think that's really important. Take more bad photos. And in doing that, I think I'll be taking more good photos. Anyway, let's leave it there. So I'm going to do a quick gear of the week. I think you already know what it is. The Fuji X100v. It's just been a pleasure. I've only had it for less than a week now, and it's just been such a joy. Everyone that sees it, everyone that looks at it, comments on it, they want to play with it. Is that a digital camera? Is that a digital camera? That looks so beautiful. That looks so cool. That looks like a film camera. I've got such enjoyment out of using it, even just a small amount. And one thing that I can say, I just want to touch on briefly, that is something that I'm really looking forward to making videos about, is there are a few things about this camera that no one else really talks about. One important one being it's a leaf shutter, which means I can sync this bad boy to like a 4,000th of a second and I'll have no issues with my little flash. So it essentially makes my like small hot shoe flash more powerful, you know, as powerful or more powerful than like what a big strobe would be with a normal camera. Anyway, link in the description. Highly recommend having a look at this camera. If you can't, it is quite pricey. I'm not going to lie. It's an expensive, you know, toy essentially. But if it is too expensive for you, I used to own an X100S, which was excellent. However, I would recommend, if you're looking at the X100 series, at least look at X100, X100S, X100T. I think at least try and get an X100T. That would be the oldest that I would get, because the T has the classic chrome profile built in. But having said that, if you can pick up like just an original X100 for a few $100s, that is a great buy, because again, leaf shutter with a small hot shoe flash, you can do a hell of a lot. Anyway, I'm just going to tease that. I'm not going to go into it for now. Thank you for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, if you could brush up against the like button for me, that would be so good. And I'm going to leave it there. Yeah. I can't remember how to finish. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Have a great new year.